Welcome to The Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a show that is a central hub and safe space for authors to share their stories. The Bold Book with Dr. Denise begins now.
Hello, my name is Dr. Denise Nicholson, and this podcast is for anyone looking for inspiration. Today, I am welcoming my guest for today, and her name is Laura Munson. Welcome, Laura. She is a New York Times, USA Today, and international best-selling author. Okay, acclaimed writing retreat leader and a fierce advocate for the power of creativity and wonder. Please welcome to the stage Miss Laura Munson, the author of this beautiful book. And she's going to give us a little bit more details on how we can get it and how you can be immersed into the beauty of the wild.
Hello, Denise. Thank you for having me. Thanks for doing this good work in the world. We need lots of light and love and inspiration and boldness. So thank you.
You're welcome. I'm a lover of words and I'm a lover of books. I was raised practically in a library. So I love that. I love just this relationship with books and people who write them.
Well, let's talk about the book.
Yep, let's talk about the book, baby. I have a question. I know that, well, first of all, thank you for writing The Wild Why. And it is beautifully written, beautifully, well layered. But before we dive into that, into the, how you're feeling and how you prepared for this book, I want to know what's your story that made you come up with this concept.
Okay. So this book is called The Wild Why, and the subtitle is called Stories and Teachings to Uncover Your Wonder. So if you're in a bookstore, please support your indie bookstores. You might find this book in the self-help section, or you might find it in the memoir section. It's sort of a cross between the two, because I know that we live our life in stories. We don't live our life in bullet points or tips and tricks and 10 easy steps. We relate to each other through story. We live our life scene after scene after scene. And so I decided, after having spent my adult life learning fiction, sitting at the intersection of heart and mind and craft that is the writing life since 1988, when I graduated from college, and much to my parents' dismay, realized that I was a writer, which meant I was going to be waiting tables for a long time, which I've had a lot of jobs, Denise. Every single one of them is something you could tell your mother that you did. But there were, I've done you name it. If it's legal, I've done it because I knew that I wanted to sit at that intersection of heart and craft and mind. That is the writing life with all my might. And I have. So really, I studied the art of fiction. And that's really where I learned, by reading. And anyone out there who's wanting to be a writer, that's your very best way to learn, is to read, like Denise does, and she stands for it. Read. So hang out in libraries. It's the best place.
Absolutely.
I'm going to do one of my events on the road is going to be, two of them are going to be at libraries. And I love those events because it's just, you're in the annals of, I call us word wanderers. Right. We wander in our words. So, okay. So to answer your question, so that's just a little bit about me. So I've been writing, mostly fiction, not starring as the main character. And, although I do believe that fiction is like realer than real, I think it's like distilled reality. So the way I teach writing now, at my writing workshops and programs out here in Montana, is that like I can teach the same exact way for any genre, because it really comes down to truth and the essence of what you have to say, whether fiction or nonfiction. But along the way, I ended up writing my way through a difficult time in my life, and that became a book called This Is Not the Story You Think It Is, and it landed on the New York Times bestseller list. It was also an international best-selling book. It was published in 8 countries. The short version of it went viral in the Modern Love column in the New York Times Sunday Style section. And so suddenly I was catapulted into this whole world of women's wellness. So this is how this book emerged. I was just minding my own business, writing novels. And then suddenly I became the main character in a book that a lot of people read, and in an essay that a lot of people read. So all that to say that it catapulted me into the speaking circuit, and then it also inspired my Haven writing retreats, which is pretty much the top writing retreat in the US. And I hold them out here, and they're intimate groups of people at all levels of their self-expression. So all that to say that in those speaking gigs, sometimes in front of like 2,000 women at a time in the morning, and then rinse repeat in the afternoon, I got to be a true student of the human being, very different than living out here in Montana, where there's mostly cows and, horses and deer and grizzly bears. So the three things that I heard over and over again out on the speaking circuit that had me start Haven, and what I hear at Haven as well, were these crushing phrases. And I needed to write a book about them because I needed to create some sort of salve for them. And here they are. You ready?
Yeah.
I don't have a voice. That was number one. Number two was I'm not creative. And number three was I'm stuck.
I hear that a lot too.
Yes. And if you and I were little girls and we were playing in a sandbox and we were complete strangers and our mothers were sitting on the park bench and we were just hanging out, we wouldn't be saying those things. I'm stuck. I don't have a voice. I'm not creative. We would just be making sandcastles and like, ooh, cool. Like, can I play with your shovel? Here's my bucket. It's when we're little before all the fear comes in, before that inner critter, that inner judge is born. So the book is a response to those three statements. It's about returning to your wonder as a way of connecting with yourself and the world, and especially when it comes to your self-expression. And to me, it begins here. So the book goes deeply into our connection with self and to how we can use our true, authentic connection with self to relate with the world. So that's what's behind the whole thing.
Why do you think that wonder is such an important, or so important in reclaiming who we are as children in our adulthood? We were.
It's somewhere along the line. So I was walking around in the woods in Montana when I was thinking, I've got to find the antidote, like the salve to those three statements. I'm not creative, I don't have a voice, I'm stuck. And I thought, well, creativity is a really big word. And many of us as children are slotted in different lanes. You're creative, which means you're artsy. You're a brain, you're going to get A pluses. You're a jock. You're going to go to a D1 school. Whatever. And that is such a disservice. While it identifies people's strengths, saying somebody is not creative is just simply fallacy, because everything we do, every thought we think, every act, everything that comes out of our mouths, where if we put earrings on or not, everything we do is an act of creation. And so again, back to the sandbox, children don't have to be told that they're creative or not creative. It's just everything we do is an act of creativity. So I thought, let's break down the word creativity. It's too big for people. What's behind creativity? And I'm here in Montana before I go on book tour on Sunday. And I was walking around behind my house and I sat down on a stump, because if you can't stop and ponder, whether it's a stump or on the forest floor or on a park bench, then how are we to let in wonder? Because I think wonder is what's behind creativity. But wonder is a big word. So I thought, what's behind wonder? And that's when I realized, I think that wonder is about curiosity and awe. And we're curiosity heavy in our culture. Look at the rainbow. What makes a rainbow? Google. And suddenly we're looking at our screens and we're not looking at the rainbow.
Yes.
So it's the awe piece that the Wild Why really tunes into, and it calls the reader to action, to be in your awe, and not as a silly, frilly idea, but as a vital piece of who you are. and how we can relate with others too. Because without awe, curiosity and awe put together, how are we to find empathy? Especially for people who are different from ourselves.
So you believe that awe helps us to connect with the people around us, especially when they are different from us.
Yeah. Curiosity coupled with awe.
Okay.
Because the curiosity piece can so quickly turn into looking at screens. What makes a rainbow? What makes that person different than me? And suddenly we're giving it to Google, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what if we hung out for a minute in our questioning, in what makes us wonder about somebody else, especially if they're different than we are? And in that act of slowing down and pausing and really wondering about someone else or something else, then we're not only connecting with others, but we're self-connecting. And that's the piece that I think we miss when we're only hanging out in curiosity. It's the self-connected piece that then leads to self-expression. And this whole book is about connecting with yourself, connecting with the way we think, how our thoughts sabotage us and serve us, so that we can connect with ourselves, but also connect with others in a profound way. Not just, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? I'm sick of that. And I know you are too. Otherwise you wouldn't have the show.
No, for real. I am a person that is it's very important for me to connect and understand people. And I thought at first it was just because of the way I was raised, but I also believe it's because of who I have become over time through reading and exploring and finding out about different cultures and different worlds and different people apart in different parts of the world. So, yeah.
Yeah, because without that, then I don't think we have a civilization.
Yeah.
And
But
when we
you've had a super rich career, and when I was introducing you, I was like, best-selling author, but from best-selling books to global media appearances, to just finding your haven in this writing retreat. How does the wild represent your own evolution as a writer and as a woman?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know it took me, I can write a novel, but naming a title is really rough. But when you go to sleep really intentionally, this goes for everything, really setting your intention on something. I thought, I got to come up with the title. The working title for a long time was Wonderful with 2 L's, which I knew wasn't a great title for this book. But I came up with the wild why. Like it woke me up at 4 a.m. And so the word wild, I love it in there because I do live in Montana, and I have for 3 decades, even though I hail from cities. But it's this place that has me on my knees in accountability and gratitude and awe and wonder and all of it. And there's something that happens out here, and that's why I lead my retreats here. I worked with over 1,000 people from all over the world. And I hear over and over again people saying, "Ugh, I just love who I've been here. I feel like I've connected with myself." And I think what they've found is that the wilderness within them, this sort of integral side of them, and in this controlled, organized, safe environment called Haven. And I'll hear people say, I'm afraid that when I go back into the world, like, back to New York City, that I just won't, like, I won't know who I am, because I really know who I am out here in nature. And my response is always the same thing in some iteration. But you are nature. This we are nature wherever we go. We are nature in an elevator in Midtown Manhattan. We are nature walking around in the fluorescent lights of a Target.
Yeah.
We're not separate from it all. And that's what I've learned living here. And, walking around in the woods can be as therapeutic as anything I know. So that's the wild piece of it that I want people. A lot of this book takes place in Montana, but it also, the fourth part of it is a lot of travel. That I go all over the place in the last 100 pages. And so to really kind of see if it's true, to see if we can maintain that inner wilderness wherever we are.
You have created this beautiful haven, this haven for writing. What inspired you to start that retreat, and how have you changed from what you've learned from your students?
What a beautiful question. Well, Haven was born out of those women's conferences where I was speaking. And because I got so truly heartbroken hearing those refusals, I call them. I'm not creative. Of course you're creative. And I don't have a voice. You're using it to say, I don't have a voice. Like, how about use your voice to say you have a voice that no one else in the world has? No one has your voice. It's not possible. So find it, uncover it. And how do you do that? Getting back to your wonder. So I started Haven because I thought, I don't want to be on these stages staring into, I can barely see the women, who all are kind of, I'm on the stage, the spotlight in my eyes and looking into a sea of women. I thought these women need to come to Montana and be in a small, intimate group where they can really connect, self-connect and connect with others and be held in a safe place for their expression. Because listen, I mean, this book is not for writers at all. There is a writing component if people want to choose that part. We can talk about that in a minute. But I do have a book about writing coming out next year. But this book is about wonder and self-connection and self-expression. So what happens when people leave home and they come out here to Montana and they're in a small group? They start to understand that it's not just about the words. It's about what's behind them and what's in between them. And then what's left in their wake, and what's behind your words has to do with intuition. There's a whole section in The Wild Why about returning to your intuition. And that voice, when I know, I should say, when I haven't listened to my intuition, I've just said, that's just not. And then come to find that I really should have listened. So I
end up paying for it somehow.
Yeah. Yes, it's a real thing. And I think actually in this book, I kind of write my way all the way through into what's behind wonder itself. So if wonder is behind creativity, if I break it down by curiosity and awe, what's behind all of that? And I think it's intuition. And how do we get our finger on the pulse of that? Because you can be an eloquent speaker, you can have great command of a subject and the ability to express yourself, but it'll never really connect with the people you're speaking with if you're not connected with yourself. And how to do that? Slow down. I'm really against hustle culture. I think it's absolutely stealing what we had as children that made us free. Even if we suffered abuse, we as children, little children, were full of freedom and wonder. And we lose that along the way. And this book is a call to return to your wonder, not just as a silly frilly idea, but as a vital part of your existence.
So how do you slow down, and what does that look like?
Well, it can be lots of different things, and people might be listening to this and saying, well, I don't have time to slow down. I've got stuff to do. I need to get to work. I've got to pay the bills. I got to pick up my kids from school. I don't mean slowing down, like take the whole day and nap. And although wouldn't that be great? Because I do believe in the essential nature of rest as well. We can grab small moments. And so how do I slow down? Something always happens when I take a walk. Always, even if it's just a short walk to my mailbox and back. Something always happens. So I think that there is a self-kindness, a curiosity, a wonder, a piece of awe in just slowing down for no good reason.
Yeah.
Not to say, okay, now I'm slowing down. People will say, well, now I'm meditating, and then now I'm going to get in my 10,000 steps, and now I'm going to, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what if you stopped for no reason for minutes and just beheld the world around you? I'm about to be in 15 different cities on book tour for 2 months, and I can't wait to bring what I like the lessons.
15 different cities in 2 months?
Yes, that's gonna be a big tour.
Oh my.
And I can't wait to take these messages from the west of Montana, where I live,
Yeah.
to that elevator in Midtown Manhattan, to, an airplane, waiting on the tarmac, flying from Dallas to San Antonio, etc.
Yeah.
These messages are not expensive. These messages are not outside of you. You don't need letters after your name. You simply need to observe what children do.
But you
Before
need a plan.
sorry, go ahead.
I'm just thinking you would still need to be intentional about it and create a plan or some habits or a system so that it can help you. For example, you're going to be in 15 cities in 2 months. That seems incredibly fast paced. How do you intentionally lock in time to just be and slow down on such a fast pace, trip?
A lot of it is just simply breathing, but
Mm,
much of it has to do with seeing the opportunities for slowing.
mhm.
And I'm not saying be late to an appointment, because that's
Right.
irresponsible or
It's not
disrespectful.
slowing down. Right.
It's it's just taking a it's I mean, I was just in Mexico City, and I was in an Uber, and I was looking out the window, and I just saw this little girl who was in her school uniform with her mom, and they were very carefully picking out what kind of ice cream to have. And
Mhm.
we were at a stoplight for a long time. And I just sat there and watched this little girl. She was so excited about her after school ice cream. And she took it, this was like serious business. And her mother was smiling in the background, but was, oh yeah, okay, yeah, well, maybe might consider pistachio, or I don't know. But it was just this moment that I could have been with my, nose in my phone,
I
doing
missed it. Yeah.
what? That's that important. I mean, maybe it is important, but in that moment, I thought it's just too quick. We're put it this way, Denise. I
Mhm.
have not lived in a city since cell phones were a thing.
Mm.
So when I lived in cities, people were asking for directions. We were talking to each other on the subway
Yeah.
or not. But when I go to cities, my heart kind of just kind of wilts, because everyone's walking around looking in their phone instead of looking
Looking
at.
around and looking at each other.
That's right. And
Mm.
there's no way that's not hurting us as a culture, as a civilization. So I'm just trying to get back to, I come from farmers, I come from homesteaders, I come from people who didn't know what was ahead of them. They couldn't
Mhm.
Google what's the farm land like in Illinois. They came from upstate New York, and in
Mhm.
covered wagons to Illinois, to farm, and they had no idea what was ahead of them.
Right.
I think that that's in my DNA somewhere. That
You know,
you know,
I went to a retreat with, I don't know if you're familiar with Lisa Nichols, and she led a women's retreat, and that was kind of my first immersion into a retreat where I was there for 7 days. I've been to weekend retreats, but this time I was there for a long time, and it seemed like a long time. And she talked a lot about this. She didn't call it wonder, she just called it going back to our playfulness. And it seems like it's the same, same thing you're talking about. It's the same concept of going back to our childhood, when we enjoy just speaking out and enjoy just being playful and saying whatever and doing whatever we felt like doing at the time. And I see that in my granddaughter, my grandchildren, but mostly my granddaughter, because she's the youngest, and she's 8 years old now. But when I look at her, she says whatever she wants to say. She does, even if you try to curtail her play, she's still doing it how she feels, and she enjoys it. And I enjoy watching her. But in my world, of course, you want to be so careful because you have other people that is relying on you, dependent on you, waiting for you. So you want to be so careful. But what she taught and what I learned from that exercise is to just find joy in everything, look for playfulness in every day.
Oh, yes. Playfulness is a big piece of this. Again,
Mm-hmm.
this is not a silly idea. Like for the naysayers out there, this skeptics,
Yeah.
this is essential. And so here's something that's like a practical way to connect with your wonder. So at the end of each of each of the chapters in the Wild Why, there is a section called Your Wild Why. And in that section, I give some kind of a prompt. Some of them are writing prompts. Many of them are simply living prompts or thinking
Mm-hmm.
prompts. So the thing that gets in the way, like the minute we're in the sandbox and we start to say, your shovel is better than my shovel, my bucket's better than yours, I'm not going to let you use my bucket. Oh, your sandcastle isn't any good. That's inner critic stuff. And it's born at around, I've worked with a lot of educators and psychologists and people in that world at Haven Writing Retreats, because they need to fill up their cup. And they tell me that inner critic, which I call the inner critter, because why not, to your point, be playful with her,
Mm-hmm.
is born at around age 12. Again, short of abuse, and then it's earlier. So let's say that inner critter starts happening, that self-consciousness, that kind of inner terrorism really is what it is, happens at age 12. I'm 58. I've had a lot of practice. That
Mm-hmm.
inner critter, listen, that inner critter is mean. Most of us wouldn't treat our worst enemies the way we treat ourselves in our own minds.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're not even aware of it. And what I have learned is that inner critter is just a scared child. And she knows exactly what to say to break my heart. She's had lots of practice. And when she's really scared, she's really mean. My son used to have night haunts, more than a nightmare. Like they were very physical. He was completely unconscious, but he could talk, think, and act. And as he got bigger, he'd come into my room in the middle of the night and he'd kind of start thrashing around. And it was sort of scary, because he was this like strong, he's 24 now and he was a collegiate athlete and he's a big guy. And what am I supposed to do? Get out of here. Go back to sleep. No. As a mother, sweetheart, you're having one of your things. Like
Yeah.
everything's going to be fine. Let's walk you back to your room. Let's get you back into bed. I'll rub your back until you go to sleep. That's how I deal with that inner critter now. Like a scared child having a night haunt. And she's really scared, but she's also like really capable of breaking my heart. And when I do that, it quiets her down. So one of the prompts, one of the Your Wild Why sections in
Mm-hmm.
the Wild Why is to take a day with a small journal. I'm looking around. I just have big journals around here. But a
Mm-hmm.
small journal, the kind that like you can get at a bookstore.
Yeah.
Like a little moleskin.
5x8 or something. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it maybe even smaller than that. Like they fit in your purse or your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
I know I have one. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Like about the size of a postcard.
Mm-hmm.
And something that's easily accessible, and devote it to the inner dialogue that goes on, and write it and check in with how you feel. If you start to feel like anxiety, or if you start to feel like you're holding your breath, just check in with, I don't feel good right now. What's going on? Tune into the way you're thinking. I can almost guarantee you that you are in some place of self-sabotage, that inner critter is being mean to you, and she's using really sharp words that push every button.
Wow.
And write it out lovingly, instead of trying to exile her.
Mm-hmm.
I'm aware of her and understand that she's just a scared child. How would you treat a scared child?
Their child.
And just love her into submission. But it begins, if we write it, if we get it out of our heads and write it, then we can look at it and say, I can't believe I'm talking to myself that way. That is so cruel.
Yeah.
I would not even seriously talk to my worst enemy like this. So just to have a day of awareness, and you could keep it in your purse for a whole week or a month or continuously, but just try it for one day and notice. Or if that's too much, try 1 hour. 1 hour
Mm-hmm.
of your life, and just track when you're feeling like, it's like around here they say that you won't know that a mountain lion is attacking you until you feel the teeth on the back of your neck, and that
Mm.
I've never once heard of a mountain lion attack around here, but right, it's kind of, that's the way it feels, like this feeling of bracing, or like something's got you by the neck. Well, just slow down just for a minute, and you can find that minute. You can find 30 seconds, and you can take your pen and write down what you're saying in your head. And then if you don't have time, you're rushing to a meeting, later on, open it up and look at it,
Mm-hmm.
and then say, do I want to invite that thought pattern into my mind? Is it serving me? And maybe you're raging because you need to rage and you never rage. So maybe it
Yeah.
is serving you. But if it's mean, if it's true, like inner terrorism, can you say, sweetheart, you're just scared. Let's put you back to sleep so that I can get on with my life. And that is a little playful, isn't it? Even though it's dealing with something that can be really tough.
Yeah.
That's awareness. Yeah.
But you know what? It makes sense. And it's so important to already have words to speak to that inner child, because she is scared and her job is to protect you. And she's probably always done this thinking, okay, this is how I protect us. So, she's doing her job.
She thinks she is.
She thinks she is. She's messing up. I mean, she's telling you all these horrible things, but in defense of this inner child, she is stuck feeling like, I need to protect us, and this is how I'm going to protect us, because it's so easy for us to be comfortable in our day-to-day world and not move forward. Or when we try to move forward for bigger goals, then that inner child or that inner critic comes out and say, whoa, what are you doing? We don't do this. You can't do this well. Whatever negative things are said. But it's so important to have words to negate those interactions with your inner self.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought this up, because I think that the inner critter isn't necessarily bad
Right.
or wrong. Like,
Mm.
I think she's scared, and that's why
She's
she's so
scared.
mean.
Yeah.
That's why she's so mean. So you can cultivate an inner champion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, would that make you a fool if you spoke to yourself lovingly?
The
The inner champion could say, maybe you shouldn't jump off that cliff in your
next
career, or
mm-hmm.
in Montana on a real cliff,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you shouldn't, maybe it's time to get out of that relationship. Maybe it's time to downsize. Maybe your house is too big and your mortgage is too expensive, and it's time to make your life more affordable. Or I'm not saying step away from conflict.
Yeah.
I'm simply saying, get aware of how you speak to yourself in your own mind.
Yeah.
I volunteer at the local middle school for the 4th graders. And then I come in again with the 7th graders.
Mm-hmm.
And I only do that because I've got a friend who teaches at the 4th grade level and a friend that teaches at the 7th. So that's just how it's worked out. But boy, has it been a fascinating study, because in 4th grade, I come in and I do these fun writing prompts with these kids. And they are so excited. I mean, there's some shy kids in the back row, but like mostly they don't even want the directions. They just want to put their, the pen in their hand and just move it around. And they're not sitting there thinking about being good or bad or right or wrong or getting an A+ or a F- or being perfect.
Mm-hmm.
They just want to free fall into their self-expression. And then they're excited to read it. Pick me, like the one, like their hand is up so long they have to support it with their elbow, And then I go into the 7th graders, and in many cases it's the same kids a few years later.
Mm-hmm.
And they're so shut down. Their body language, their arms are crossed, they're looking down, don't. And there's only maybe just a few kids that are excited about it. And it just breaks my heart that our self-expression can be that shut down at such a young age, because it's usually because of one thing that one person said. Can I read you a little teeny thing from my book? Because it just fits this perfectly. So this is how the book starts. And The title of this chapter is Have You Lost Your Wild Why?
Mm-hmm.
And I quote from my 4th grade journal, which I don't really like pink, but it's pink patent leather. So it's shiny pink and it says private with a little lock. 4th grade journal. So how old are you in 4th grade? Like, I can't do math. I think you're 9. Is that right? If you're like
4th grade about that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
9. Okay. Here's what I wrote. I talk too much. I ask too many questions. I cry too easily. I laugh too loud. I'm too sensitive. I'm not sure what that means.
Mm.
And I feel bad about all of it. Laura Munson, 4th grade journal. And I feel bad about all of it.
Oh.
So from 9 years of age, and this is, I mean, I bet there are a lot of people out there going, me too.
Mm-hmm.
And did I really talk too much? Did I really laugh too loud? Did I really cry too easily? Did I need to feel bad about all of it? Probably what happened was somebody said, and maybe it was just one person, you talk too much.
Mm-hmm.
You're
And you
too
created a story around that.
created a story around it. A story, and this is for all of us, a story that I've been cultivating all my life. So without the self-awareness of what goes on with that inner critter, I think you'll just keep cultivating that story, and it will be so habituated that you won't know any other story. So that's why this book is full of stories.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want you to tell your stories. But that said, tell your stories to somebody who's safe. Like, I feel very safe with you right now. I wish we were in the same room having tea together. But like,
Come to Morocco or Montana or wherever you're going next.
yes. But be careful about who you tell your stories to. You know,
Yeah.
for my students and clients who are writing memoir,
Mm-hmm.
I say be very selective about
The stories you tell.
and you don't owe everybody everything. Just
Yes. I'm a student of Les Brown, and he says, give them the sizzle, but not the steak. They don't need to know all of the information.
Yeah, I can help you. If you want to write a book, I'm your gal. I can tell you. Because a big piece of it is learning how to write past the fear of exposure, but not splaying yourself supplicant on the altar of self-expression. And there's a fine line between the two.
Oh, wow. Well, I would love for you. I have a writing class myself every Sunday at 11 a.m. for the past 5 years. And so I would love for you to be a guest speaker and just come in and throw some knowledge up there and, help us to just fine tune what we already have been working on, because it sounds like you have some incredible experience, Laura. And what, better the world is because of you, and not just your books, but also these retreats are incredibly impactful. And I can just imagine how life-changing it is to be immersed in that kind of transformational, retreat.
Yes. And it's, a retreat can change your life, but it can also I've never said this before, but it can interrupt your life so that you start to connect with yourself again. And then what do you do when you go back home? So a big part of Haven at the last night, I talk a lot about reentry and about how to go slowly and be careful. It's kind of like after you've gotten out of the hospital or like around birth or death. It's like time sort of slows down, and to honor that. And, so I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to be practicing what I preach, because I'm going to be I'm going to be in New York City and Boston and Chicago and San Francisco and LA and Seattle and Dallas and blah, 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 on and on and on. And so I have this thing that I call the inner colander. And because it's playful. I just try to be playful because, I am playful. I love to laugh and be silly. And why so serious? You can still live your life in a serious way and still be playful. So I always imagine, like, right when I'm getting off the airplane and I'm like walking into like a big, like JFK, and because our little airport here in Whitefish, Montana is just like, there's never traffic. There's always parking. And you know the person at the counter, and it's like, hey, how you doing? Hey, here's a hug. Oh, I brought a little card for you. I mean, it's like, I love where I live. And so, but it's like, okay, here we go, New York City. And so I imagine that I have this colander, like I'm in a colander, like when you're pouring pasta water out, and I get to decide how big I want the holes to be. It's like I can change the aperture. And so see how that's just a playful way of looking at it, instead of like,
yeah,
God, this is going to trigger me. I'm going to have anxiety. Oh my God, do I have like, anti-anxiety medication in my brain? It's like, I suffer from all kinds of anxiety because I'm a highly sensitive person. Probably you are too. Everybody that comes on my retreat is a highly sensitive person. We feel things. We feel a lot. So instead of shutting ourselves down, how do we honor that deeply feeling side of who we are? So I always think of it as a colander. And when I walk in, and because I'm so full of wonder and curiosity and awe of people who are different from who I am, especially in an airport, I can just be like, forget the colander, just like, hello. And then I'm not protecting myself. Then I'm too much. And then I don't know how to process it. So that's the way. On Sunday, I'm going to be landing in New York, and I'm going to be in JFK. And I think I'm going to have the holes in the colander pretty small.
Yeah. Okay. So you can guard yourself and let out as much as you seem fit in that environment.
Yeah. And it's a self-guarding, but it's not a because I'm scared or because that's bad or because I feel invisible or I feel too visible or whatever it is. It's just a kind of self-containing. And that's what this book, I hope, will do for people, because it's full of teachings. Yes, but it's not full of bullet points and remember this one-liner. I just don't think that those work ultimately. I think that if you and I were sitting next to each other on an airplane and we locked eyes, and I might say something like, do you want to talk for a little bit? I bet you we'd start telling stories and we'd get to know each other.
Yes.
I think we need to do more of that. You know what I mean?
It sounds like you've been watching me when I fly. The last time I was coming back from Tennessee in December, and I sat beside a woman. She was knitting or crocheting. She was crocheting. And I was like, you know what? Can I ask you, who are you doing this for? I just started to get into her business, asking her a lot of questions. But we talked for a long time. It was, a good conversation during that flight. And after that, I came home and girl, I was ready to start crocheting again. It was something that I did a long time ago when I was in school, as a matter of fact, and learning, And so I came back and just started, and it just awakened something different in me, like a more nurturing maternal kind of being, even though I've been a grandmother and I've been a mother and I've been, a wonderful auntie and, but it just awakened something different in me. So it is so beautiful to connect with people, even when you're on a flight.
And there are times, listen, and I'm not saying like, go out there in the world and just be like totally open to self-expression and other people's stories. Because sometimes you need to be,
locked in, closed off. Yeah.
Eyes closed. And that's fine. But
get in your sleep if that's what you need. If it's slowing down during a flight, slow down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But pay attention to how many times you grab your phone because you don't know what else to do. That's different than just, I need to see if my kids are okay, or I need to check if I got that email for that appointment that I need to show up for. But if it's just because it's a tick, like a habituated thing, like why not just resist the phone, look out the window? I'm I always get an aisle seat on an airplane because I'm a bit of a claustrophobe, but this time I've got window seats all the way across the country because I just want to look out. I want to look out, and I'm sure the person next to me is going to be like, "Could you please put
pull the shades down?"
And I will if they need me to. But I just want to like look out, look up, Almost everything I've learned in life, I've learned from watching birds. I just went down to South America to Uruguay, where I led a writing retreat. And then I had my own personal writing retreat. It's an incredible country. And, like beaches of flamingos and the most amazing birds that we don't have in this hemisphere. And it was just such a reminder to look and listen and be still. Not everybody can take a month-long retreat, but you can do that walking to work. You can notice the birds. You can notice the birds.
So that was a letter writing retreat? That's totally not a book writing retreat.
Oh, it wasn't a letter writing retreat. It was a writing retreat.
Oh, okay. I'm like, what is a letter writing retreat?
No, I don't know I don't know what I said, but no, it was a writing retreat, but it's called Haven Wander. So it's heavy on the wandering.
Okay.
And light on the writing. Whereas my retreats out here are, you learn your craft, you find your voice, you develop a project. It's a deep dive. You get workshops, you get classes, you get one-on-ones, and it's all me leading a small group. But I do once a year, I do these things called Haven Wander, and I go someplace I've never been before. I lead a retreat, and it's heavy on going slowly.
Laura, we have so much in common because
so
yes, because you are a writing coach. I have the writing incubator where I have, I'm helping people write their self-help books. And then I host this Quantum Leap retreats where we go once a year to a different part of the world and get immersive and transformational and do transformational work just to give the people an opportunity to have breakthroughs. And then you're doing, not the same thing, but something similar. And I'm like, oh my God, we have such a connection. So
yeah, we should do something together. I've been the writing teacher on other retreats, like my friend Jennifer Shelter's Radiant Retreat, which she does in Mexico every year. And I think collaboration is really important. There are a lot of people doing really good work in the world when it comes to self-expression and how to get your finger on the pulse of what is behind what you need to say, have to say, want to say in the way that only you can. And whether that's going on a retreat or having a conversation with a good friend. I mean, I really have gotten to a point where I'll say to somebody, I have a story I need to tell, and it's going to take some time. Would you be up for a phone call right now or meeting me, for a walk? And it's going to take a while, like maybe an hour. I mean, to have boundaries like that, instead of just being like sneaking it in and hoping that they'll have the bandwidth, that's actually in the book, because there's a scene in the book where I go to this like one pony town in Montana to meet with a friend of mine who's on a cross country road trip. And I'm going through a big crisis in my, I believe it was a divorce crisis. And so I just, it was like a weekend, it was last minute. And she said, meet me at this, old hotel in this teeny little town. And, Montana, that it's like about an 8-hour drive. So I drove down and we sat there and talked all day. And it was like story for story for story for story, back and forth. And I put it in the book. And then because it was such a profound day, because we made the room for it. And it was regimented at all. It was just two women sitting. We ended up going to like the hotel bar, just like you see in Montana, just these old school bars with people just kind of hanging out, talking, and they're all complaining about change is what's really going on. And so I put it in the book. And then the prompt at the end of that chapter is to find a friend who really wants to hear your story, even though she might not, or he might not know what the story is, but is going to make room and on your storytelling. And I find that living here, there's a lot of that. And I don't know I hope it's everywhere, but I'm really sick of hearing people say they're fine when they're not.
Yeah.
And I would like to be that friend to hear how you're really doing.
Yeah.
With boundaries, right? Because maybe you ask a friend, hey, I've got a story I need to tell, and it might be triggering because it's about a wound from my childhood and it's coming up and
you haven't healed yet. Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
do you have time? And listen, if you're on the other side of that, it is perfectly fine to say, I don't have the time right now.
Mm-hmm.
Or I
Yeah.
don't know if I can, I don't know. I think I'm going to pass.
Yeah. That's too sensitive for me right now.
It might trigger me. I'm
Yeah.
going through my own stuff, but
Yeah.
that's okay. But then go find somebody who does have the room. We have to, because when we take our ball and go home and stop saying how we really are, it's going to break down our connection with, well, ourselves, but it's definitely going to start eating away at our wonder. But I do not believe that wonder can be killed. And I do believe that it is absolutely necessary to live
Yeah.
a healthy life.
I've learned that. Before I went to Lisa's retreat, I thought that wonder could be killed or self-esteem can be low. But I learned that it's just covered up by all of the negativity that we hear and start to believe when we hear it. So, oh my God, thank you so much for coming and sharing so much, because it has been, oh God, really a time for reflection for me also. And I'm sure the listeners too, how can they connect if they wanted to, be more of or hear more about all of the great things that you're doing in this world?
Oh, wow. Well, and even as you say that, my own inner critter is like, well, we'll see, It's like Denise likes it, but who knows how it's going to be, if it's going to play in Peoria, as they say, and there'll be critics, there'll be people who don't receive this message. There'll be people who say nasty things about it. Like anybody out there who's writing a book. I mean, that's just part of it, but it's none of your business. Your relationship is with the book itself. And then after that, as my Native American friend says, the book holds medicine. And that's none of your business. Your business is to be the administrator, if you can do it, if you can handle it, of the medicine, but it's the book that is the medicine.
Yeah.
And so I hope that you will find this book. It's sold anywhere where you buy books. Please do support your independent bookstores.
Thank you for joining us for the Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a central hub and a safe space for authors to share their stories. Follow Dr. Denise on Facebook and Instagram at Denise Nicholson, or go to denisenicholson.com. Remember, no one can share your story better than you.